studio execs, and then about 30% are BD folks, typically from platform companies trying to get the business of all the game developers in the room. And then the other 40% is designers, producers, developers. The attendance for our Monday event series is typically like this one, a little bit over 25 or so people. SFGDWs have been typically about 300. And our GDC events, which is our party, our luncheons, that was about more than 8,000 this year, so a lot of people. The types of developers who are attending, everyone from the guys who may draw something, to Kingdom Age, to Clash of Clans. Our second arm is the YetiZen Accelerator Program, which is very important for you to know about because one of our portfolio companies from the Accelerator is actually speaking tonight. So we are the only games-focused Accelerator program. We typically take about 8 to 10 companies per round, and we've had 30 companies since 2011. That actually needs to be updated since our new round, our round 6 started today. So we're what, 40? About 40. We're about 40 now. And then we have about 9 of the most active, committed gaming VCs on our board of advisors, right? Some notable YetiZen success stories. A company called YesGnome got over 100 million downloads. They're also the exclusive licensors of Star Trek, so the game you're going to see later this year is from that team. Style Me Girl, that's Simon, so I'm not going to say too much about them right now because he's going to be telling you a little bit more about that. And then Foundation Games, one of our other portfolio companies, was Apple Game of the Week for 2 of its games, Lumi and Tropple. Here's some of the folks on our board. You can check their backgrounds later. The few I will point out is Ping Li from Excel, who led Supercell. Phil Sanderson, very wonderful guy, very quiet guy. You're not going to see him between conferences, but he did Funzio and a number of other gaming investments. One of the most active gaming investors in the space right now. And then Tim Chang, a bit of our VC rock star, is in a band, all that good stuff. Also did NGMoko and a number of other investments. So, we mentioned this already. This is the number of applicants we had for the Accelerator program this year. These are the number of slots that are available. And that's yearly. So if you're interested in the Accelerator program, come find this guy who's sitting in the first row. Tends to make Yeti voices, does not wear a crown or a cape, but still he's the real Yeti. And all our events, they're videotaped, right? Our goal is to help game developers wherever they are in the world, and not all of them are fortunate enough to be living in the Bay Area and coming out to events like this one. And even if they do live here, they may not necessarily be able to come to every single one of the events. So we record them, we make them available on YouTube at Game Startup TV, and if you email us and ask us for the slides, we're happy to give you the slides. In most cases, that's exactly as presented here. In some cases, the speakers may want a few things out that they shared with you to share with others. They're edited out of the video. It's not going to be there in the slides. So always a good reason to actually attend here in person anyways. So enjoy today's event. With that, let's give Simon a hand, our first speaker and our only speaker today, Simon from Frenzoo.
Wow, right line. Okay. How's everyone going tonight? Okay. So, my name's Simon. I'm actually kind of new to the resolution from it. Hang on.
That's good.
Is it? No, there we go. Yeah, I'm actually relatively new to the game industry. I'm not someone who's been designing games for 15 years or anything like that.
He's from Asia and very humble. Ignore this preamble.
I'm half Asian, so let's balance by my other half. So I kind of I learned a lot from talking to very experienced game designers as I was kind of going through my journey over the last 2-3 years. And I really wanted to share a bit about what I've learned and from the industry and from our own experience in making games. And hopefully you guys can be very successful or more successful through the process. So actually, before I start, who here is a game developer? Who's making games? Your company is making games. Cool. Who would classify themselves as, who's under 10 people or under 5 people? Okay. And who's above 50 people? Okay. Do you mind who do you work with?
I work on The Sims.
On The Sims? Wow, fantastic. Okay, cool. So there's a lot about this, the most successful PC game in history. So I'm going to be talking a bit about the topic of, is there a mid-core market for women? I think it's a really fascinating topic. You hear totally divergent opinions. So for example, when people are talking about it in the last year and all the trend of moving even Zynga talking about, oh, we're moving, away from, our traditional audience towards a more mid-core male audience. And then it makes it sound like mid-core is all bad. And then I was at Casual Connect just recently, and they were talking about Kabam gave a great presentation full of lots of really interesting numbers. They were saying how, actually no, mid-core is actually close to half the audience is actually female. So what's going on here? Is there a definition problem, or is there something that we don't really understand happening here? So
it's actually someone earlier today said to me, what do you mean it's mid-core for female? Does mid-core mean men?
Right, exactly.
So, you know who you are.
Well, we could do an engineer thing and define it as, mid-core equals men playing games, whatever, okay, and this presentation will be over. But we're not going to do that. We're going to kind of jump in and explore the topic. So we've got about 1 hour, and I'm on a flight back to Hong Kong. So I'll try to get through it, but also leave some space for interaction. So just interrupt me anytime you've got questions. So that's the topic for today. So, big picture, you guys all know this. Globally, women are the slight majority of the people who play mobile games around the world. So it's, there's no kind of single figure that's accurate, but it's roughly about 300 million women playing games on smartphones and tablets around the world today. So on tablet, it tends to be a bit more stronger, and iPhone or on smartphone, it's about half-half, even split. And that's pretty consistent through territories as well. So for example, in Japan, Japan is pretty much a half-half market. If you look at like the player population, the so-called housewives segment is the largest segment, followed by working professionals and students and other segments. So it is the majority, but our mid-core games appealing to them. So before I get into that, a little bit about us, just to kind of set the context about my startup. So we're mostly based in Hong Kong. This is our team. We're kind of close to 30 people now, including a whole bunch of interns who work for very little, as do we. So we are focused just purely on 3D lifestyle games targeted towards women and girls. That's all we do. We don't do games for guys. We just focus on that. My background is actually from virtual worlds, so I came into gaming through virtual worlds, and we were doing that before we changed direction. We've been out in the market in the app stores for about just over a year, so we launched last year, and we're seed funded at the start of last year. This is just a bit about our brand and our two apps that we have out in the market. So our go-to-market brand is called Midcore. So we're actually a brand play. We're trying to build out a new brand, which happens to have lots of great games kind of underneath it and supporting it. So our tagline is fabulously me. If we make women feel fabulous playing our games, we've done our jobs. So that's kind of what we're focused on. And these are the actual players, so it's a really interesting mix. You'd think for the game that we make, it would be maybe younger, but it turns out that there's actually, for our first two apps are dress-up games, like fashion styling games. And it turns out that dressing up never goes out of style. So even all the way to like 40, 50-year-old women who do that. And all the way down to like, 4 or 5-year-old. So it's funny, I came in today to the lab, and we went through the YetiZen program, and sometimes mail gets directed, physical mail still exists, gets directed to us here in the lab. And Gordon from YetiZen kind of handed me this, this envelope. I was like, what's this? And it was like handwritten, and this kind of little scrawly kind of, written in pencil. I was like, what's that? And he's like, I think it's a fan mail from like a little kid. And I looked at it, and sure enough, it was like a fan mail. And it's one of the first physical fan mails I've seen. We don't really get that. And I was so excited that I took a photo of it, and I'm ready to like log on it and share it on Facebook. And I thought, hang on, what if it's a complaint? What if it's like, I hate your game, it really ripped me off? So I ripped it open and looked in it, and it was some suggestions for improvement, but mostly a very positive kind of fan mail. So that was great. So yeah, anywhere from like 4 or 5 years old, all the way up to 50 years old. So it's a really interesting mix. We have two apps out in the market, Star Migo and Teen Vogue Migo, which is obviously a collaboration with Condé Nast. And we have well over 5 million players on these apps, and it's kind of growing pretty nicely. Okay, so for today, actually let me just show you so we get a bit of context. This is the first game we did, so it's kind of like a 3D fashion dress-up game. You can kind of go in there and it's all touch-based. You can see the clothes and go on photo shoots and enter contests, and yeah, there's lots of kind of interesting content there. So let's talk about, we're going to cover what is Midcore, let's define it. Let's take a traditional male Midcore game and break it down and see what makes it Midcore. Then let's go through the bulk of the presentation as well, how are guys and girls different when it comes to games? Because I believe that there are some fundamental differences. And we'll look at some case studies, kind of weave through that. And then one page on kind of conclusion opportunities. All right. So, okay, let's start. How do we define Midcore? Okay, we know that Skyrim is not casual or Midcore, right? Okay, Skyrim's pretty hardcore. And we know that Fruit Ninja is not really a core game, okay? So what's in the middle? Anyone want to take a stab at a definition? What is a Midcore game? Brave souls? Let me, and I have to admit, like when I sat down and actually prepared for this presentation in the last several days, I was like, hang on a second, what is Midcore? And then I looked up and there's so many divergent definitions. So let's try to break it down by saying what defines casual and core. So casual is aimed at, obviously, the mass market. So mass market appeal, artwork, style. It's defined by no learning curve, so immediately pick up and play. The rules are simple, either because the mechanics are just so easy to understand, or it's an existing genre that everyone knows how to play already, tic-tac-toe. So the learning curve is really non-existent in a casual game. From a game design point of view, it's able to be picked up and played in very short bursts, so it's very small, bite-sized pieces of fun. And that dictates that the game loop would be short as well. So that means that you can kind of spin through the game loop within 60, 90 seconds and have achieved something tangible and kind of made some progress through that. So that's kind of like an example, obviously there's a gazillion casual games out there, but if I fire up Angry Birds, I can go and have an attempt and hopefully, pass a level or fail, but I would have completed one kind of loop, hopefully with a successful positive outcome. So that's casual games, which can be freemium or premium games. I think everyone kind of knows that. Let's take a look at core, and I wasted 150 hours in Skyrim. I wish I could get back. No, I loved it. I loved every second of it. It's actually, well, it's very much aimed at hardcore gamers, right? It's got very deep, layered gameplay, so you can play it in many different ways. You can have different strategies. I love the videos of like people playing as kind of pacifists in the game and actually leveling up really high without actually killing anything in the whole game. So it's really got very kind of open-ended gameplay. It's a true kind of RPG in the sense of the word. It's got very long play sessions. It's hard to achieve anything in a short session. You won't achieve anything in 90 seconds or 2 minutes. Half an hour maybe, you'll go and grind through a dungeon, maybe it takes you half an hour, maybe it takes you longer. And of course, core games today tend to be dominated by premium business models. So that's pretty obvious what a core game, and you could put in like the GTAs of the world and Call of Duties also into that sort of thing. Although Call of Duty you can go and have a session in a short amount of time, but still to kind of invest long play sessions in that model. Who put a lot of time into Skyrim as well? Okay. Yes. Okay, so let's stab at a definition here. Let's say that Midcore is versus a casual game. There's more learning involved, so there's more systems. So you have to go and take time to learn those systems. You can't just jump in immediately necessarily and get going. You at least have to know something, even if it's just a 1-minute tutorial or kind of, to understand the game systems. And it has the potential for longer play sessions. So it could be that you could play there for, 50 minutes or 35 minutes, as opposed to just 3 or 4 minutes. Now, can you play a casual game for 50 minutes? Sure. Depends on the game. It depends on if it monetizes, if it plays on energy or some sort of time regeneration technique or not. But typically, a mid-core game you can keep playing. There's ways to keep going. And then there's depth to it as well. So, a mid-core game would have like different systems that give you kind of like more ways to play the game, or some things to kind of progress towards different styles of playing the game. And as a general blanket statement, they monetize better. Now, of course, there's outliers, and there's, had a catch up with a friend from King today, and we're talking about Candy Crush, and that monetizes really, really well, and that's very different from a kind of a mid-core game monetization. Mid-core game is very heavy on the 0.5% of players who are kind of whales, whereas something like Candy Crush is much more broader monetization. Get a lot of small amounts of money from a big, broad sector. So versus casual, that's the comparison. What about versus core? Versus core, it's much more accessible, so a mid-core game is kind of easier to get into than a core game, let's say. It can have shorter sessions. You may not be playing for like 5-10 hours straight. So, it's funny, when I took the flight from Hong Kong over here, I got rerouted to Cathay. Usually I fly some cheap airlines through Philippines or something. And this time I got that flight was cancelled, so they put me on a direct flight from Cathay. And Cathay has like the power plugs in the plane now, so you can keep going the whole time with power. And I literally sat down for like 8-9 hours and just played 8 or 9 hours of Pro Tour on my, like Knights of the Old Republic on my iPad, because it just came out recently. And that's like, and I've only gone through like 5% of the game or less than that. So that's very much kind of like long play session. A mid-core game typically doesn't work like that way. It will have play sessions anywhere from tens of minutes, maybe up to like an hour. And a mid-core game typically is free to play, and we'll kind of talk a bit about why. Okay, so that's the definition we can use. So what about like platform? Some people would say, well, mid-core is about more like mobile platforms, and whereas core games are PC platforms. And I kind of disagree on that. I mean, if you take a game like Baldur's Gate, which I also got into quite a lot, that game is very much a hardcore game. Forget about the fact that it's on a tablet. It's a very hardcore game. It's brutal. And this is the game that I kind of had to uninstall it again after spending a lot of time on the iPad. And it's just as hard. I mean, it's just a straight port. So it's nothing to do with the platform. It's to do with the game design itself. So let's move on. Now we've defined it. Okay, let's take the classic kind of example of Clash of Clans. So who here plays actively?
I have a clan.
Sorry?
I am the leader of the clan.
Oh, you're a clan leader.
Yes.
Great, awesome. So let's talk about it. So you guys are pretty familiar, but let's just recap for everyone else and make sure we're on the same page. So here is a classic kind of very successful, you could argue like one of the top 2 most successful mid-core games on the market. What about it? So it's definitely accessible, right? Everyone's been through the onboarding process. You see how easy it is. You tap a few places, and then your troops come out, and then it's like straight away you're defending and building. It's pretty easy to kind of get started, right? It's got layered gameplay, and by that it means that you can play at the simple level, which is just have some fun, just go around, and that's the beauty of it. It will kind of adjust your opponents based on your level of commitment or skill. Or you can really go deep into it, and we'll talk about that. Very short game loops, so you can go and be done within like 2-3 minutes and have achieved something. The optional strategy we'll cover. And however, you can go and play for longer sessions, and we'll talk about the next slide. And of course, it's a free-to-play game. And so this is, I think, a really good example. So let's break down in more detail the depth of the mid-core game. So, anyone who plays it will know that actually there's quite a lot of strategy and optimal positioning and placement. So, I used to obsess, about like all my kind of like placements, and I'd go and like tear my thing down and rebuild it in a different configuration, and I did that 2 or 3 times. And the beauty is that you don't need to spend money doing that. So there's kind of some depth even if you're not spending money, which is really good in a free-to-play game. Now, some other games, like you take your typical farming game, may have that strategic depth. It may be the placement of the farm, elements matters. But often it doesn't in those sort of first generation farming resource management games. It doesn't really matter where you place it, so there's not much strategy while you're waiting for all your timers to kind of expire and regenerate. Choosing what your army is composed of. Choosing how you want to attack, who you want to attack. Optimizing your kind of like your building queues and so forth. I mean, it's kind of like an RTS. It's back in the StarCraft 2 days. Which order, build order, and which troop orders, and how do you want to plan it out with time. So I would argue that this is definitely kind of a lot of depth, a lot of strategy. Yes, it's not a full-fledged RTS, but there's a lot of stuff going on here for the players. So I think that's kind of what makes it, a Midcore game. I think this is kind of like the key part. Now, this game also has social, so, and you would know this running a guild, a clan, sorry. There is the element of co-opetition. There's, the typical kind of like clan structure. It's like as a clan, you're competing against the other clans, implicitly in this case. As well as like within the clan, you have your rankings and who's contributing the most and who's kind of doing the best within the clan. So my colleague Jeremy and I used to run a clan as well for about 3 months. And it was always so much pressure because it's like, you're at the bottom and I'm always at the bottom, I'm like really low level. And it's always like, hey guys, tomorrow the clan minimum is now level 27. Please get to level 27 or you'll be ejected. So, okay, now up to level 27 and then, okay, now the level is 30 and you're going to keep on going. It's like a lot of pressure, but that pressure works, right? That pressure really goes and gets people, engaged in retention and monetizes as well, very well. It also, so it gives you kind of a meta goal on top because Clash of Clans doesn't have a story, it doesn't have a purpose, there's no kind of, like alliance and board, there's nothing like that. I mean, it's just, this free-for-all, right? It has no purpose. So the clan kind of gives the purpose to it. And it also very smartly kind of monetizes the socializers, right? It's not just the killers, it's the socializers who want to go and help each other, right? There was a really cool talk at Casual Connect talking about how games are being smarter about how Midcore games are being smarter about how they monetize people who want to play in supportive roles. And for women, as we talk about, that's actually pretty important in the mix. Okay. And then let's talk a little bit about how does PvP play into this thing. So PvP in this sort of game is endless gameplay, right? The game developers, you guys, us, we don't have to design and develop a whole lot of content. All we have to do is just create a really simple, small framework, and then let the players kind of come up with their own content and their own drama and intrigue as they kind of attack and defend every single day. So endless gameplay, and it also gives them a goal. The goal is to get to the top, to be the top clan, to be the top player. And it's fun to go and check out the top players and see just how they are and they're rock stars within that universe of the game. It also monetizes the killers, the competitive ones who really want a revenge. Revenge mechanic is really strong in this sort of game. There's nothing you hate more than coming back and find out that all of your resources have been plundered by someone else and you want to just go back and exact some revenge if you have money to spend on it. And if not, you just kind of stew away until you have them on your list and eventually you're going to come back and try to take them out. But the most important thing from us from a game designer point of view is that it's a resource consumption. It sinks resources out of the system and it's a very effective sink. It basically forces you to kind of do that. You're going to get attacked or you use your troops. If you think about it, this is kind of a wither mechanic, right? If you remember back to Farmville, 1 days and you have your wither and your crops, if you don't come back, your crops disappear. This is a wither mechanic, right? Just in a different way. If you don't come back, your troops are going to get destroyed, right? Your resources are going to be taken. So this is kind of like a retention, a time-based appointment mechanic, a wither mechanic. Just presented in a different way. And you don't feel angry at the game, that's the key thing. You don't feel angry at the game for like withering your crops, you feel angry at whoever did that to you. And so you love the game. If the game is your friend, you want to go on exact revenge on that other person. And so that kind of leads to the question of like, does this work for women? Does this kind of very core, this element which is kind of at the heart of most successful midcore games, does this work for a female audience? And I just want to stop at this point and ask you guys, what do you think? Do you think that this sort of can work? Or what do you think? What's your opinion?
Yeah, it's really.
Okay. Yep.
What does the rest of them think?
Yep. What do you guys think? You're a bit biased for the clan leader here. Anyone want to take a stab at it?
Partially. I mean, I think, yeah, some women will like that, and some days they'll like it. But there's also another category of things that you'll want to reward too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of is the answer, that at least based on what I'm seeing and looking into as the more I get into it and understand it, is yes, there are. I mean, there is no one homogenous kind of female market, and you get different players within that and different mindsets and outlooks, and that varies sometimes. It varies based on how their day was. It varies depending on many things happening. And also you just get very competitive women, and then you get people who are more about, they don't want to compete, and I'll go through that in more detail. Generally though, if I'm going to say a blanket, PvP is not as strong. Direct PvP is not as strong for a female audience compared to a male audience. And even if you look at like competitive, rankings on like games, if you look at pick a competitive game, that has a female and male population, tends to be like the top players tend to be male players. Not because women aren't as capable, it's because they choose not to play. They choose not to play in that way. So now that's a pretty strong statement. So let's kind of try to explain that a bit.
If I can just add,
Yeah, go for it.
I would say that all those mechanics work for the female market, but maybe you would change the name of the mechanic. Like for example, instead of killer, it might be like their fashion competitor or whatever, but the mechanic's still the same, you're just changing the name.
What I found is that doesn't translate exactly. And maybe I'll explain.
Well, there's like for example, pets.
Yep.
I forget the one that was made by Slide.
Yep.
There would be turns, and people would vote on it, and whoever would be voted highest would take away the other person's pet. So that was kind of what they were killing with that. But you wouldn't say killing because of the audience they were going after.
Right.
But it was still the same mechanic.
I think there's some subtle difference in that, and the difference would be about, maybe you're right in terms of presentation, but there's a direct versus indirect competition, and yeah, let me dive into it.
Also, one thing I would say, this is actually not about the presentation, but more how the audience is interacting. Since a lot of the money in social mobile games has usually been in casual games, which have a lot of female players, I would imagine a lot of you guys who are game developers have a perspective on it. Please don't feel that you cannot share it and not speak for women and whatnot, because the idea for sessions like this is basically sharing your learning experiences, and we all learn together, and there's no one's going to say, hey, you spoke for all women and you were very stereotypical or anything like that. So if that's the concern for why you're not sharing your perspective as game designers, please put that to rest.
Yeah. And I learned to get over the, hey, but you're not a woman, how can you design games? I learned to get over that within the first 2 weeks. Yeah.
No, that's just the Australian.
So let me put the kind of, cliche, stereotypical, kind of like controversial thing up there. You put the cars and you put the doll houses together, and then you go and give a young girl and say, play, enjoy. And they end up with something like this, and put the cars there and put in the doll houses and make sure the cars are okay, and did you have a good day, are you okay, good night? And we laugh at it, but it tends to be true. And I feel like it's partly societal, but I think a lot of it is just inbuilt in the biology. And let's talk a bit about, let's break that down. What does that specifically mean? So what I'm going to do is kind of list out just a list of what I'm kind of seeing as the main differences between how women like to play games and men. And again, this is broad strokes, and this does not apply for many groups within it, but just as a kind of a summary. So let's talk about the first one, which is like story and character context. Characters and story, I believe, are far more important to women than to men, especially in playing games. Emotional connection, the feeling of kind of empathy in both directions, like listening to and listening, are important. And I think that this is actually an opportunity for us because, a lot of games don't do they have a quest which will be like, oh, can you help me out? Oh, thank you very much, something like that. What about the other direction? I think there's plenty of opportunity to go in the other direction. If you look at the kind of the back and forth of like a conversation or, how women support each other, it tends to be a lot of like backwards and forwards, helping each other. It's not just a one-way street all the time. So I think that is, it's definitely strong. Relationships are really important, and then the context and the resolution matters. Don't go and have a quest that doesn't give you an emotional reward at the end of it. Don't leave things hanging, right? It's bad form to go and like use an emotional hook to get you involved in the action, and then not give you a resolution at the end of that. So I know a lot of games like Dragon Age. Dragon Age is really popular amongst women. Alistair is like the most popular male NPC in a PC game currently. And you want to see some sort of resolution to him, not just kind of like, oh, what happened at the end. So, I mean, there's a small handful of companies who I think do this pretty well. So this is Pocket Gems, and it's like, we're lucky to be getting a great education here. I went to the local orphanage, and these kids don't even have a library, start the quest. So there's some impact, right? Some emotional impact. I'd say many guys would just kind of click next. Let me just see the objectives and let me achieve the objectives and do it the best I possibly can and become on top. And Heyday does this well. I mean, even just subtle kind of emotional things, like the little girl and the animation she makes as you kind of like, give her something. And this is an event that's running today, for example, and organic food is in style, you're going to go on, make sure you have that and you get double bonuses and things like that. So context and story, I think, matter. And the companies that do the best tend to have like, some sort of relationship, emotional element as part of it. So that's one. Now it's difficult. Okay, so this is a really, I really like what these guys were trying to do. This is a startup based out of Canada. I think it's Silicon Sisters. They did a game called School 26. And they really tried to say, okay, let's look at the teenage years. And the teenage years for girls is all about trying to navigate myself to the center of the social circle and feeling like comfortable and accepted and, popular. Its popularity is high school, right? And so the way you do it is not through outright competition or like whatever, fighting. It's through social engineering, right? You go and engineer different things to happen, so you engineer your way to the middle of the social circle. It may be by helping people, it may be by bad-mouthing people behind their backs, it may be by whether you like the status update or not, or whether you give it a like on Instagram. I mean, there's various different ways, but it's all about social engineering, particularly in teenage years.
What's the game called?
School 26, yeah. And unfortunately, this game wasn't successful, but what it attempted was really good, and I kind of studied this game in a bit of depth. So they tried to have this kind of whole range of emotions, and you'd have scenarios and situations, and you would actually go and try to pick which one would be appropriate. I think the problem was it was too overwhelming for the players, and that's the challenge: is how do you go and get emotional depth and a range of emotions, and have some sort of freedom of choice without overwhelming the user. Like, it was just too much. Too many choices. I felt really stressed. I'm like, I'm never going to get this right. And of course, you can't programmatically generate dialogue and conversation, right? This is not Mass Effect, So, very ambitious. The idea was right, but it's very hard to get right, which is why many people just don't even attempt it. However, I think there's room, and we need to kind of get further and further. I was saying to someone I was speaking to today, why are there no kind of like, very kind of nuanced romantic comedies in games? There are in movies. Why not in games? Because it's kind of hard to do in an interactive space. People hate text as well. That's the thing. It's like they hate text, but they love range of emotions. So how do you convey it? So anyway, there's a UI issue, there's a game design issue, but whoever solves it, I think will do really, really well. Okay, let's go on to number 2, which is the nurture mechanic. Yes, another cliche, but I believe it's very true, which is women as a whole tend to enjoy the process of nurturing and growing something more than guys would. They'd like to grow an army and then use it to destroy someone. But here it's like, take care of pets, animals, characters. I'd say that, the one example is like Pokemon,
So
kind
the
of old
desire to
school.
destroy is non-gender.
Sorry? I don't know. Some stories, I can share some stories from them. So the taking care is very important. So it's grow them, it's also defend them. And so both of those can be monetized and designed around for maximum fun and monetization. Are they happy? Are they healthy? If they are, I feel good in that process. And of course, Dragonvale was probably the best example of that in the last couple of years. Did a really good job of that mechanic. And here's an example of how not to do it, okay? This is kind of like, social games 1.0 or 0.5, which is like, congratulations, you just got a new chihuahua, and then one day later, it's like timer ticks in, okay, time to show the message.
Abandoned.
Your chihuahua is sick, abandon or save. And it's just like, it's short-term thinking, right? I mean, players are smarter than that now. They've kind of evolved as well. Just like we've evolved, the players have evolved. So you can't just go for the simplest thing. I know in China, for example, like they'd have Tencent, and they'd have their, virtual animal business and pet business. And it's like, the classic story, I'm short on my numbers this quarter. Hey guys, we need to go and have increase our numbers to hit the target. So suddenly, introduce a disease and an illness that kind of sweeps through the whole virtual land, and everyone has to pay more money, and they make the target in the short term. But you kind of abuse the trust of the players through that process. So nurturing is kind of a key one. So this is an example. This is Grace. This is actually my girlfriend. So this is a quote from her. I love taking care of my Sims. I love it. I check on them about 3 times a day if my Nexus has battery. And I've been doing it for nearly 6 months. And I can say this is true, as I see her all the time doing it. I love finding out who's doing what and making sure my kids in the game do great in the contests. And I can continue to build beautiful homes for all of them and expand out. And so she's totally free user. She's a hardcore free user of this game. She's never paid at all within free play, but she's got really, really far just by being very kind of like careful to make sure she comes back every day multiple times. And this is her favorite game. My game is up there, but it's not at the top. So she enjoys the fashion game that we make. But I think that this nurturing mechanic is really strong in that. And if you go and look at, read up on the interviews behind the Sims and, look at the original design intent, I mean, at its heart, Sims is essentially, relationship building and home building. And yes, there's many other aspects and elements, but relationship is kind of one half of the equation. Now, Sims, I would argue, kind of like does a great job, but I think there's more that can be done. I mean, Sims is a fairly simple system in terms of how the relationships are done, but it's an incredibly deep and complex game. This is not a casual game. People may think it's a casual game, but I think there's a lot of depth to it in how you play it. Yeah, so that's the nurturing part. Let's talk about the next point, which is about art and details. Art really, really, really matters. There's a reason why it matters. I think that the pattern recognition, the appreciation for details, how women process, even the visual cortex is different in women compared to men. This is just, how we're wired. So that's why you see a lot of like visual matching games. Actually, for that matter, text and word matching is also stronger. And of course, the classic example is your hidden object game genre. Now, hidden object games, is it really a midcore game? I'm not really sure. Is it a mechanic that has a lot of strategy to it? Not really. I mean, you're kind of like just getting better and better at that same skill. There's not much depth in there. But some of the games are getting really interesting kind of hybrids, like combining the two genres together, like resource management and hidden object games. And I think the theme matters a lot. So we've debated internally about, should we make a 3D hidden object game? Should we, because our focus is 3D.
I just had an experience with a hidden object game,
Yep.
and from our research, women demographic doesn't like any innovation in hot games. It has to be a straight hot, otherwise if you try to put some quest elements, they turn away, you see it in your sales, and Unfortunately, it doesn't work if you try to merge hidden object and classic adventure in any way.
I think you're right. I think that the core mechanic, people are trained to it, they like it, give them what they like, So that when they're in that play zone, then you better not go and disrupt them from that, right? Now, I still believe around the fringes, around the edges, when they're taking a break from it and they're recharging, you can go and have an opportunity to do that. So, by the way, the same is in slot machine games. Don't go and distract the slot, right? Slots are predominantly female gamers. They're in the zone, don't go and confuse them. I think there's a reason why Zynga slots didn't do so well, because it was too confusing, it broke you out of the zone. It had like a slot at the bottom and it had a little RPG running kind of like progress thing at the top. And it just didn't really work. So I agree with you with that core kind of loop. Yep. So here's another example. This is actually, you may know Christine. So she's pretty out there in the industry. And she's, I was asking her about this, and she's like, I play casual games obsessively. I really love cakes. I love cakes, looking at cakes. I love eating cakes and making cakes. So I finished Bakery Story. She finished the whole game because she really loves the art and the style, and it kind of corresponds to that. But she didn't play it in a very casual way. She planned it all out and decided what she's going to put down, what jobs to start, when to come back and collect the cakes and so forth. So that's an example of the art, is very appealing, and then that kind of drives the usage as well. Because essentially, Bakery Story is similar to Restaurant Story and Fashion Story, and it's kind of similar mechanics, but the art is, obviously, the theme is very different. Here's a game. This is an interesting one. This is like a pretty midcore game, Caban, a lot of, high-end strategy, guilds, collaboration. Dragons of Atlantis is like over 40% female players. But it's kind of very similar game to some of the other Caban games, which are not easy to get into. And I think part of the reason is because the art and the fantasy environment, that particular style is appealing to women. And so that's why you get a usage. But it's interesting, I was talking to some friends at Caban, the behavior is different. It's more about collaborative work, like, hey, we as a guild, and I've forgotten what they call the guilds in that game, but we as the guild are working together. It isn't so much for kind of individual glory in that game. And this is a kind of funny one. They have their dragon armor, and it's very, very nice and pink. It's kind of funny, and it doesn't really work for me, but maybe it works for the users. And speaking of pink, it doesn't have to be pink, so don't get into the thing thinking like, hey, if I want to make a game for women, it has to be pink only. No, it doesn't. Women love dark, gritty, kind of like crime-themed things. They love lots of different styles of genres. So there is no kind of like stereotype that is the only thing.
Is that something that is country specific, or that is across the board? Because just if you look at TV shows, movies, and sort of that's become, there's a higher number of women who kind of like the whole crime thing over the U.S. Now, is that the same in other cultures?
It varies country. This is a great question. I think it varies country by country. I've recently kind of spent some time in Japan, kind of understanding the market, and that market is much more homogeneous and it's much more like kawaii, and you get some variations within that, but it tends to be that. Whereas it's everything, And I used to run a virtual world before, and we get everything from really dark, kind of like underground, very heavy goth styles through to fashionista, glamourista, pretty in pink sort of thing. So I think it depends on the market, but there's no one size, at least for the US, there's no one size fits all when it comes to style. Yep.
When I was living in the Philippines, they have a lot of drama shows. They like the drama shows.
Yep.
And one of the big themes is kind of like the underlying like criminal case, underlying criminal activity that they.
Right.
So I think a lot of places are starting to get in, because I don't think crime shows showed up in the U.S. until like mid-90s, late 90s.
Right.
So now that there's so many of them here, I think it's just a matter of time before they kind of populate throughout the world.
Yeah, great. And also I think
it's mostly about the drama though.
Yeah, it's the drama. There's a lot of like interesting things that happen, and it's similar to a lot of the hidden object games do well, kind of following a similar sort of construct as well. And they did a really good social integration as well as part of that. Okay, number 4 is collection. So collection, and I kind of grouped in customization. They're probably separate, but I just put them in because they both start with a C. Collection is really important. If you think about it, Pinterest is basically a collection game. You know, it's a game of going and scouring around, and eventually, oh, I discovered something great. I'm going to pin that. I collect it. I go somewhere else and I pin it. It is like a, an Easter egg hunting game. You know, go and look around, look around, look around. Yes, I got a great egg. So, this ties in really well with the nurturing. If you have collection plus nurturing plus story plus relationships, it gets really, really strong. And you express yourself through that. So this is actually Christina. Christina's our creative lead in Funzio, my company. And she's pretty hardcore. She plays everything from Star Wars Galaxies, MMOs, all the way through to Mole World and Stardom. And Dragon Bell. And so, for example, I really love pixel people. The world and characters were really cute, and I had this desire to collect all the different people. I spent a lot of money, and when I'd collected all of them, I stopped playing. Happy with it. So it's a collection game for her. She really enjoyed the collection element. And other successful games for women, like Midcore games, like, for example, Campus Life. At its heart, that's a collection game. You want to collect all of the different girls. You want to collect all of the different collections. And I think that's very strong. Now, it doesn't mean that guys don't like collecting. Of course we do. We like collecting, sets and things like that. But I think it's stronger with them. Let's talk about competition. So back to the theme before. I think that direct competition doesn't really work. It's stressful. It's stressful to go and say, hey, why is someone attacking me? And do I have to attack someone? I don't want to attack someone. Don't force me to. And then I'll come back to that theme in a second. And if you think about it, okay, think about the games on the playground, like just at an early age. You don't see spontaneous basketball games between girls just starting up, right? They have to be, team sports tend to be organized. Why? Because it's very stressful for, having to go and make decisions that affect your social relationships. It's extremely stressful to go and just organize a game of teams. Who's on my team? How will she feel about it if she's not on my team? Things like that. I mean, they care much more about those sort of things. Whereas guys will be like, yeah, I just want to play. Yeah, I want to go on the team. So you don't really see that on the playground. And I think that kind of follows through as well. So the competition. Now, does that mean women aren't competitive? No, absolutely not. Many women like to compete, but many times they like to compete indirectly. So when game designers think about what ways we can compete indirectly, it may be through a third party. I have this kind of crazy game idea. I don't know, sure. But anyway, you're competing through indirectly through something else.
Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, sure. So let's take a different one, which is Zynga, right? Zynga is this kind of classic, and I was explained by a friend of mine, but it's this classic kind of compete and cooperate in a social environment where you have the Zumba and everyone's having fun and doing the dancing and things. But then you do get a pecking order, right? You get the people who are at the front of the class and they want to block the mirrors a little bit. They wouldn't ever directly attack someone, but they may go and block the mirrors and have some indirect ways to compete. And I think that, and if you want to compete against someone or bring someone down, you don't do it directly. You go and do it through third parties and you kind of engineer that. So, by the way, speak up if you think of it, if you don't agree, but I think direct competition doesn't work. It doesn't resonate as much as
How do you take
indirect.
the stress out of competition?
Sorry, say again?
How do you take the stress out of competition?
You take the stress out by minimizing the impact on you. So if someone competes against you, maybe you lose something. You need to sink resources out of the game, right? But maybe you gain something else back. So it's like you take away with one hand, but you do something different. It's like some really smart slot games. Oh, you lost, but you gained something else. That's one way to take the sting out of losing. And on the other side, you don't attack directly. You kind of do something else which has the effect of sinking someone else's resources out of the system. Yep.
Simon, I'll add something to that. When I was doing Espresso Fitness, which is an exercise bike connected to the internet, 3D graphics, and we did a lot of work with leaderboards and so forth. The thing about it was we were trying to figure out how to avoid the killer effect and all this male-dominated leaderboard thing. The two things we found that worked were competing against yourself, where you're really competing against your previous exercise thing and trying to get better than what you did before. Women really soaked that up. And actually it was broader than just women. It was anybody who wasn't in tip-top shape loved the fact that they were competing in a space, you know, in a safe place against, kind of against themselves. The other one was competing against people you know, but again, relatively achievable things. So rather than having the person who instructs the class competing against you, you would be competing against people that were already at your level. So we did a lot of self-sorting and then competition within those areas.
Okay.
And that worked pretty well.
I agree. I actually think like group collaboration can work just as well as PvP. And so this is some female PvP. This is like sorority life, a kind of reskin of Mafia Wars kind of thing. And a very small subset of people liked it. And you did get your aggressive kind of, you know, users kind of who did that, even to the point where they established burn lists and had that whole kind of burn list mechanic. So that was pretty nasty. But the game was relatively successful, I think, not because of this, because of all the other elements and the fact that you're in a sorority together and you're working together and achieving goals. This is one of our games. We kind of experimented with the PVPEX event because we wanted to see this for ourselves, you know, how does this work? So we had kind of like passion challenges, you know, 1 versus 1 and a whole kind of global leaderboard. And we had to do it quick because we didn't have any engineer resources. I just had like 4 or 5 days to kind of, you know, one engineer to pull it together. So we kind of did this sort of thing. This was eco-chic kind of challenge. And we found that the, you know, the monetization interestingly went up like 60, 70% during the PvP event period. Retention went down because it was a bit of a turn-off. It's like, I'm never going to get to the top of this, you know. So the 60% was like the whales. The whales would go off and, you know, compete and try to get to the very top. But mass market, it wasn't really adopted well. So if this was a mass market feature, retention should be equally up, you know, or maybe even higher than the monetization. And I have a pretty good idea how to improve on that. We'd have like brackets, you know, and you'd maybe be competing against something else, not other people. So there's ways to fix it, but it was a good example of, you know, using our current systems to kind of demonstrate this in reality. Now, 66% is better than nothing, and so we're going to have this until we develop something better, but I think we can do better than that.
Was that loss of retention kind of permanent? Did you like lose players from the game, or was it just kind of temporary?
No, it actually went up. Retention went up about 22%, but monetization went up much more than retention. So I would have hoped that they would be kind of even split. A bit of power along because of retention plan. Social is stronger. Social cooperation, back and forth support networks are stronger. You know, heyday and like, you know, visiting each other's roadside shops and buying and selling tends to be stronger. And you can combine that with events really well, time limited stuff. Number 7 is the learning curve. Women hate, and this is a broad statement, but generally speaking, women hate, you know, heavy learning curves. They want it to be easier at the start. Guys on average tend to be more like learning by trying and failing, and it tends to work better if it's like learning by example or kind of like having a mentor or a guide to help you out. And the metagame, don't forget the metagame. Why are people playing the game in the first place? Often, you know, they're playing it to recover from daily stress, right? It's the stress of like, you know, having a family taken care of. It's the stress of bad emotional relationships or things that issues that are happening in their work or, you know, with family. So often we're playing these games to kind of, and this doesn't apply just for women, but we're playing these games to go and bring ourselves to a better place, right? To kind of like recharge our kind of like, you know, emotional batteries, if you like. So if you go and add a very high learning curve, it just adds stress. It kind of like you're losing the metagame in this process. And there's also a sense of virtual order. Even if real life is kind of like a bit frayed on the edges, you have like virtual order. You know, things are nice in this game world, and I feel good about that. And you know, if that's combined with feeling connected to others, that's even stronger. So this is kind of the base. So, you know, and this kind of hit me, you know, after I've launched. It's like, why are they playing the game? They're playing to de-stress and enjoy in the first place. If you don't get that right, nothing else matters. So to finish up, conclusions and thoughts. So is there a Midcore market for women? Yes. I've argued strongly. Sorry, it takes an hour to get to that conclusion. Yes. It's a real market. I think it's growing. But you can't just copy what worked for guys and just pink skin it and then assume that will work great, because I don't think it will. And I think the key is accessibility, making it easy at the start, having smart depth that kind of reveals itself over time, integrating emotional aspects, story relationships, and then the social part as well. And the last thing I would say is, like, if in doubt, just listen to the players. And I've learned a lot just by, we have focus groups 3 nights a week. We get 20 people into the office every week. Strangers, we don't know them, and we just listen to them. And you'll kind of like get to their conclusion and learn a lot just through listening to the players. Yes. Okay, so sorry I had to rush, but thank you very much. Do you guys have any questions?
Any questions?
Yes, that would be good. Maybe I'll put my contact details at the end. This
You can respond to them on your camera.
yes, I still have $5 of credit on T-Mobile. So my email is simon@frenzoo.com. My Twitter is there. I also write a game design blog called iteratingfun.com, so you can check that out, and I'd love some feedback. And if you guys have any questions or things to share with me, I'm learning as well, so just shoot them over, and I'm really happy to kind of to chat more.
Any questions for now?
One last question before you. Nothing?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.